Wasting no time, today we are discussing where every weapon ranks in the meta of Apex Legends Season 22. There have been quite a few weapon changes with the new Akimbos being introduced, so let's get right to it. There's a lot of great options in Apex Legends weaponry, but we have a few C-tier weapons which are just fine. I debated whether or not to even put these in their own category, but I put both the single P20 and the single Mozambique on the bottom of my ranking because yes, you have to pick up one before you can make two, and make them both akimbo. Both of these aren't great in today's meta as single options, and they both have slight variances in their performance when you are only rocking one of these weapons. Not much to discuss really. They are fine, but they are weak compared to pretty much everything else in the game. The long range meta this season greatly suffers due to the emphasis on E-District, but if you are rocking ranked Apex Legends, the charge rifle is a pretty decent choice. The charge getting more damage the further away enemies are can be very exciting to use, but the increase in gun shields on LMGs hurts this weapon's viability as it negates some of the big damage body hits can do when it's already fairly difficult to get an accurate shot on enemies, and when you get a weak shot because of someone's hop up, it's not the greatest feeling. At the end of it though, there's other much better longer and mid-range weapons. Our last C-tier weapon is the EVA 8 shotgun. The EVA 8 comes out of the care package and has returned to the ground after a few seasons of being away, and its return is pretty lackluster. Not because it's bad, but because again, there are options for shotguns that are way better. EVA 8 is a fine option if you are in the ultra close range, but the overall usability and damage per shot of the Mastiff makes it a way better swap to weapon. Also, the much better Akimbo Mozambiques that have incredible range, larger mag size, and do virtually the same damage per shot make it a very obvious better option over the EVA. B tier is where the weapons start to get some viability, and they are the great weapons in Apex Legends. This could be weapons that shine at range, or maybe if you get a weapon early on before other players are kitted up. Just note that most of the weapons in B have better alternatives above them. A weapon that was pretty decent last season is the RE45, however, it does struggle a little bit today. The RE45 I think is a fair option off the drop if you are looking for a very unique experience that has incredibly fast swap to and strafing speed. However, the P20 and Mozambique being akimboed make the RE45 extremely less viable. Not to mention the PK and Mastiff buffs also make the RE45 less viable as a secondary. You'll hear this a lot in this video, but if an enemy has an LMG gun shield, you'd be better off with basically any other SMG or assault rifle, so you can't have enough damage per mag to get a knock without having to reload. We now have a set of mid to long range weapons to discuss, and the first is the longbow. I unfortunately think snipers as a whole are kind of suffering right now, as you don't need the extra range that a sniper brings on a map like E-District. Not to mention, I don't think the longbow is really that great of a gun that's actually going to get knocks on enemies. It's okay to apply pressure in rank, but if you are trading shots with an LMG user, your first body shot is basically voided. Regardless, if you want to split ammo types up with your squad, it can be nice to forego the need to use any heavy, light, or energy ammo. A weapon that honestly performs very similarly to the longbow is the G7 Scout. I think the G7 is overall a little bit better though, but not worthy of a tier upgrade. The G7 Scout is going to be a little better at applying rapid pressure in close ranges, and because of its faster fire rate, I think it's more usable in today's meta. I'll also take a second to mention that no flinching in one-on-ones anymore means that these single shotguns all get a little buff, not necessarily to the point where it makes them noticeably more powerful, but at least you're not going to get shot and miss everything because you keep flinching. The G7 is pretty fair with no attachments, and as long as you get an optic, you are pretty much good to go with this reliable mid-range damage farming weapon. The 30-30 repeater is pretty much equal to the G7 these days, and it is the heavy ammo alternative. The G7 shoots faster, which uses light ammo, which holds more ammo per sack, so that is a nice benefit, but the 30-30 shoots slower and does more damage as it's straight up, so you don't need as much ammo. It's pretty much a wash in my eyes. A few seasons ago, the 30-30 had a damage nerf, Skull Piercer was removed, and a few other changes like the reload. As time has gone on, this has made the power reduction pretty noticeable. If you are playing a slower ranked game, or if you want to purely farm damage, it is pretty decent for this. It does, however, slightly hurt more than the G7 when enemies are much closer. I do understand the need to keep the loophole in Apex Legends fairly lean, but unfortunately, the removal of disruptor rounds hurts Apex Legends' easiest to use SMG, the alternator. The alternator is still a great option, but its overall time to kill makes it extremely hard to recommend at the top of the game. It does have great damage per mag, and it is easy to use, so if you are struggling with your recoil control and overall aim, it's definitely something that you should consider. However, it's going to lose out against basically every other SMG in the game and a lot of assault rifles due to the slower time to kill. Just keep this in mind if you are losing some gunfights and you're trying to use the alternator. Our final B tier weapon is the L-Star, and it is the first LMG. LMGs across the board had a buff with the new hop-up of the gun shield being introduced. However, the overall usability of the L-Star I find to be a little bit lacking, but it still is pretty great in terms of its time to kill, for an LMG at least. The biggest drawback of the L-Star is the fact that it is an energy weapon, and it is an absolute bullet hose. You need a ton of energy ammo, and even in the few games I was using the L-Star, I simply could just not hold on to enough energy ammo. Luckily, the Havoc is still meta, so you should be able to get some energy in death boxes, but I find the energy ammo situation is really hurting in the game right now. Otherwise, the no reload feature is nice to keep consistent pressure on enemies, and if you are playing Rampart, this thing isn't too bad. Just know that pretty much every other LMG is a little bit better in terms of overall function. As we move into the A tier weapons of amazing, I want to thank my channel members, and be sure to hop into my community Discord to ask me any questions or find others to play with. You can also comment down below if you have any specific questions on the meta. I bounced quite a bit between A and B tier for the Rampage, but I decided to slip the Rampage just into the bottom of A. I find that since there are many close range fights in Season 22, the Rampage does falter a little bit, but what it falters in the close range, I do think it makes up in its versatility. Ammo consumption is really great, and having the flexibility to do damage in both close, mid, and even long range, I think gives this gun much more viability, and I almost treat the Rampage like a marksman weapon. You really don't need any attachments, but I will say, being able to do up to 1,040 total damage with a level 3 magazine is actually wild, and there really aren't many guns that can even come close to this total amount of damage output. That's almost 2 full teams of blue evoed enemies that you could chew through. The Wingman does see a slight drop for me this season, but it is still an amazing weapon. I decided to drop it down to A tier because mainly I think the Wingman greatly falters as the end game approaches. However, there might be no better weapon off the drop because as soon as you pick it up, it's basically unlocked its full potential, and you really don't need any attachments. It's just the increase in control legends, shields, and more defensive abilities in the game I do think hurt the capability to knock enemies both earlier and later on in games. If you can hit your shots though, there's very few weapons that are as effective as the Wingman. The last ground sniper is up, and it is the Sentinel. The Sentinel for me really continues to shine as not only one of the best long range options in Apex Legends, it's also an absolute demon in close range, and it is very effective with iron sights. If you do find a Sentinel right off the drop, it is pretty amazing as it can one-shot enemies with gray armor if you do connect to the head and it is charged up. The long range meta still hurts this season, but the Sentinel by far is one of the best options if you are looking to be an expert marksman who can use a little versatility in the close range. In a very similar grouping as the Sentinel sniper rifle, we do also have the Triple Take. The Triple Take, in my opinion, is the best all-around mid to long range weapon due to its flexibility and ease of use. This marksman weapon can absolutely farm damage on enemies, and even a 1/3 hit from its pellet spread means they have to stop and shield cell. Headshots can stop enemies as well and do around 100 damage. The Triple Take is going to be the best pressure weapon for ranked Apex, and it does lose a little viability in pubs, but it is still not too bad if you do get close up to enemies and you need to use it like a shotgun. Speaking of shotguns, a weapon that saw a nice little buff this season is the Peacekeeper, and while it wasn't enough to skyrocket to S tier, it's still a very reliable secondary weapon. The PK saw a pellet reduction, but in turn, it does more damage per pellet, meaning you can get more consistent damage output without needing to be as accurate. The PK is an amazing option as a secondary because really you only need one stack of ammo, letting you carry more grenades or heals. I really enjoy using the PK with an ammo hungry weapon like an R301 or maybe a Havoc. The Peacekeeper is also going to still be the best option if you want a weapon with the highest swap to and damage per shot out of any secondary close range gun. Next up is a pair of care package weapons, and this is both the Bocek and the Kraber. As you would expect for a care package weapon, they are performing decently well this season. The Bocek is the best marksman for overall damage dealing, but it being a care package gun means if you get it too early on, you're gonna run out of ammo. Too late, and you'll need something that is a little better in the close range. I would really like to see a change to the Bocek and the arrow type weapons in general. Let's see this thing come back to the ground. It's absolutely time. I'm gonna preface what I am about to say noting that I think the Kraber still has a lot of value, but you better hold on for a little rant that is about to happen. The Kraber had a pretty big non-linear nerf this season, and it is the LMG hop-up of the gun shield. Yes, this affects other weapons too, but since the Kraber is a care package weapon, I think it needs to shine much brighter than it is right now. The Kraber has never been an S tier for me since they nerfed its ability to one-shot someone to the head, but if you have a Kraber and an enemy has an LMG, it's pretty much GG's. I was using a Kraber against a Gibraltar with an enhanced gun shield, and his Sentinel was doing more damage to me than my Kraber was doing to him. It's so unfortunate that one of the coolest playmaking weapons in the game has been watered down to barely being able to crack a blue armor The Kraber is still fun for cool clips when it happens, but the only thing I think holding it back from being a B tier gun for me might be nostalgia, but I'm not quite sure. Let me know what you think of the Kraber in the comments down below. The Prowler SMG in Apex Legends still continues to be an incredible option if you are looking for one of the best close range damage weapons that can take multiple enemies at once. It has a huge level 3 35 round mag, but it does trade this off for its overall time to kill that is a little bit slower. Controller Legends having more shields via their passive does make a little bit more room for the Prowler, and this is the same case with the LMG gun shield. The Prowler is a great weapon to grab if you are looking to push a ton in pubs where TTK might not matter quite as much and you would rather have the versatility to deal a lot of damage to a lot of enemies. However, if you have this and an enemy has a Volt or an R99 or a Kimbo guns even, or maybe even a Havoc, then it is going to struggle quite a bit. When I initially made my tier list, I actually had the Spitfire in S tier, but I did end up dropping it back down to A. The Chopper is absolutely back and it is raining some serious fire in the meta of Apex Legends. The two things holding it back from being an S tier weapon is its overall movement speed when you are using it, since it is an LMG, and the fact that the time to kill is still just a little bit too slow. However, the massive mag size, new hop up, and extra accuracy when you are hip firing absolutely makes this Spitty a great option this season. Just note that you are going to lose one-on-ones if you are up against most assault rifles and SMGs, and you want to really try to keep enemies outside of that 15 or so meter range. The P2020 Akimbo is more or less our first new weapon to discuss this season. There are a lot of great things going for the P20 Akimbo. First off, you can dish out nearly 900 damage per magazine, and the time to kill is honestly pretty decent. This is easily one of the best secondaries to run. I think the damage you can do at range is super underrated right now, as I find these things to be pretty usable up to 20 meters and even further away at times. The biggest thing holding back the P20 Akimbo is the fact that you kind of need a laser sight to really get it going. Hammer points are also kind of required to make them competitive against other SMGs. Either way, the Akimbo P20s are mega forgiving. I somewhat expect these to become hard meta once the inevitable nerf to the Mozambique Akimbos that will probably happen at some point during season 22. I tried really hard to like the Hemlock this season, as honestly, for the last 2 seasons or 6 months, it's been one of my favorite weapons to run. However, I dropped it down to A tier as the nerf to the gray and blue magazines, the damage going down to 19 from 20, and the fire rate nerf between shots are all very penalizing to the overall viability of the Hemlock, and there are now better options to run. The Hemlock is still going to be one of the best weapons if you are looking for that flexibility of close range hip firing, mid range bursting, or long range tap firing, and because it has this flexibility, many pro teams will still run this thing in the ALGS, but when it comes to ranked or pubs for the rest of us, there are better choices. One of my most pleasant surprises this season is the R301, as it slightly returns to form. The R3 performs fairly similarly to the last season, but the 3 extra rounds per base and all mag levels makes the R301 feel a ton better. Off the drop, you have the extra forgiveness to miss some shots and still knock an enemy. Similarly, when you find someone with a red Evo, I think the R301 lacks time to kill to make it a truly S tier weapon, but its ease of use makes it a highly desirable pick for many and even some pro players. If you are struggling or you are new to Apex, this is absolutely one of the guns you should be using to build your confidence up, and it's nice as you don't really have to think when you are shooting it, it kind of just works. We now move into the S tier, which contains those weapons that are must use and absolutely insane right now. There are a lot of S tier weapons, which does show the health of the meta. Like we have stated a few times already, there is an obvious slight close range emphasis due to the map rotation and overall changes to the game. Let's kick it off with one of the best ground loot SMGs, and it is the car. Beyond the car having the fastest time to kill outside of the R9 for SMGs at least, there's a few really nice benefits that the car does bring. Attachments across the board in season 22 were nerfed, so when you can find either a light or heavy mag and put it on the car, it means you will be much quicker to get it kitted out than any other SMG. Not to mention the ammo changes, with light ammo being more per stack, give it a little atypical buff as well. The car is a gun that pretty much everyone needs to learn how to use, as it's going to see more and more use as the season does go on. The R99 is now in the care package, and rightfully so, it is an S tier gun. However though, it isn't as good as I thought it would be. The R9 had a weird change where you basically have to hug the enemy to get max damage, as this gun has damage drop outside of 10 meters. Luckily, E District in Season 22 is all about close range, but just know the R99 isn't the cure-all to close range fights anymore. You still have to be extremely accurate, play intelligently, and its overall mag size I find to be not too forgiving, although you can get a lot of nice one mags on enemies. It's an easy pickup if you do find it in the care package. The Flatline Assault Rifle gets my pick for the best traditional assault rifle in Season 22, slightly edging out the R301. The Flatline did have a 1 to 2 round per nerf at all mag levels, levels, which I think was really unneeded in my opinion, but regardless, the flatline has a great time to kill, great damage per mag, meaning easier one mags on enemies, and heavy ammo is fairly common this season. There's not too many things to really knock on the flatline. Maybe it's recoil, as it is a little bit harder to use. It's been a solid choice for a long time, and it continues to be one of the best weapons of the game that is maybe overlooked a little bit with all the other options the game has to offer right now. Who would have ever thought that when Apex Legends released, the Mozambique would one day make it to S tier? Well, the Mozambique Akimbo has bypassed C, B, and A tiers to cement itself squarely in the meta of Apex Legends, and its time to shine is here. A single Mozambique was always the best shotgun when it came to pure range, as it could do a full hit up to 45 meters away, but now that you can basically have two and still have incredible range to absolutely mow over grouped up enemies, the Beak does need a little bit more ammo, unlike the PK or the Massive, but still, you don't really need as much as like a Havoc or a Volt. I expect the Mozambiques to get a fire rate nerf or a range nerf in the nearest future, so use them while they are incredible. And honestly, another perk is that you don't really even need attachments to make the Mozambique Akimbos pretty OP. The Volt for me is probably the best all-around close range weapon besides the Havoc assault rifle. Yes, the Car SMG has a faster time to kill, but I think the overall ease of use in range that you can shoot the Volt makes it a slightly better, although they are ranked in the same tier. I think if you want to have a more run and gun play style with a little more versatility, the Volt is going to greatly help you achieve this. The Volt also gets a slight edge when it comes to total damage per mag over the Car. Unfortunately, it is an energy gun, so again, you aren't going to have that flexibility like the Car would have, but honestly, there's not many negative things to say about the Volt. It's been good for a while, but it has been in the shadow of the Havoc for quite some time. Arguably, the biggest surprise for me this season isn't even the Mozambique or the P20 Akimbos, it is going to be the Mastiff. If you are looking for a weapon that is a true secondary gun type of feel, low-key, the Mastiff is back, and if you haven't gotten on board yet, you need to use this thing. Similarly to the PK, the pellet reduction greatly helps the Mastiff, and I'd argue even more so. The damage per pellet increase has really tuned this thing into a masterpiece. You really have to try to not get a 40 or 50 hit each time you fire. The range is honestly great. Close range, this thing excels, as reloading one round at a time means you can have more constant pressure on enemies that can be done rather than having to reload a whole mag. Also, the Stiff needs less ammo than the Akimbo Beaks, which means more bag space for heals and your primary weapon. This will most likely be the gun I am running if I am looking to really sweat it out. I do have a couple weapons in God tier, but the last straight S tier gun is the Nemesis Burst AR. I think the Nemesis is the best assault rifle for the mid-range Apex experience. Ammo consumption is the only worry that I do have, because again, you can't carry as much energy ammo as you used to. The Nemi is slightly more friendly or beginner feeling than the Hemlock, since you can just hold down the trigger. The time to kill beats out the Hemlock even if it is not fully spun up, which easily makes it outclass the Hemlock in terms of performance. This season for me, it's a tie between the Nemesis and the Flatline for the ultimate mid-range beamer, with the Flatline being a little bit more usable if you are running and gunning, where the Nemesis I think is going to be a little bit better at the mid-range due to its recoil control. I always like to have one or two weapons in a slightly higher than S tier category, as I deem these to be the best weapons in the game, as they really are the big standout type of guns when it comes to the meta. Not a lot to say about the Devotion at this point, but if you find one of these at any point in the game, you absolutely need to take it. The Care Package Devotion absolutely obliterates groups of enemies, and the new Gun Shield hop-up gives it a small buff, which it definitely did not need. Unlike the Bocek, the Devotion has a massive amount of ammo in reserve, and I think it is absolutely the best gun in the game. However, the best ground weapon in the game, even though it had a big hipfire nerf and of course the energy ammo nerf, is still the Havoc assault rifle. The Havoc with a turbo even has a faster time to kill than the R99 care package version. I'm a little sad that the ultra close range meta hasn't really changed this season, but at least there are a few more options that are much more competitive than there used to be. Check out this video for 100 tips to improve in Apex Legends. Hit that like button. I'll see you in my Discord, and until next time, happy gaming, Legends.